Bullshit.
It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Dave Sweet, the president of MECO Marketing and Traceability. Dave, we like to talk about how marketing is about clearly defining your target markets, finding out what they want, developing it if you don't already have it, giving it to them when and where they want it at a price they're willing to pay, and then telling them about it again and again. Unfortunately, many people get hung up on that last part, the telling. But you need to start with clearly defining those target audiences, then do the marketing intel to ask them what they want. If they come back and tell you something a little bit different than what you're currently doing, develop and tweak it and give it to them when and where they want it at a price they're willing to pay. And then the telling them about it can be the fun part, like some of the stories you've told us today with your creative storytelling. You've heard my definition of marketing. Think back to what has been your most amazing moment in your experience with marketing, messaging, or communications. What's your biggest marketing success?
I think it goes back to how we turned the company around. I think that's the biggest success that I think I've had in the marketing side has been really on two levels. You know, when we turned MECO around and we said, "Hey, we're going to make a run at this, and we're going to improve technology. We're going to improve what we supply to our customers," and said, "Hey, we're going to go talk to our customers and go through that process that you kind of spoke about of identifying what are their needs. Are we serving those needs, and do we need to do something in our product offering or our service offering to address those needs?" And we kind of went through that process. But I do think it's one where, if I'm looking back, it was really convincing the people more so that we can do this. You know, I think the thing that I enjoyed the most was, I think you look at people and you say, all right, they have different needs and they have different wants. And those needs and or wants can be very, very powerful drivers to them. I think as a leader, trying to understand what those needs and wants are and what's going to propel them to do more for you and for themselves is really the art of leadership. And so I think from the marketing standpoint, I was pretty clear. We are going to be a major player in this business. And there was no question about that. I said, that's what we're going to do. And these are the steps that we're going to take to get there. And we're going to do it as a team. It's going to be a team culture that we're going to do this together. And so it wasn't about one person. It was about the team's ability to do that. Because this was a team that had never heard anything like that, ever. You know, these guys, some of them had been there 35 years, you know, doing the same job over and over again. And we're going to introduce change to them that we're going to take it to the next level. But I do think Pittsburgh guys, they're tough. I mean, they are tough people to crack at times. I think that's been a change. When I come over from the East Coast to Pittsburgh, overall, much nicer people here, I would say, in Pittsburgh. I would say you definitely get that Midwest feel here. That just people.
No cheating with their football teams either.
No. I knew you were going to throw that in, Dave. But I just felt like it was more that hospitality here in Pittsburgh that you wouldn't necessarily get in, let's say, the East Coast. But I also do feel like to make those personal relationships very difficult, I think, at times with folks at Pittsburgh, just because they more, I guess, you guys have different sides of the rivers. I think you tend to stay more in your geography. You've lived with the same folks probably since you came from birth. A little bit different mentality.
Set in the ways, and you are absolutely correct. The rivers and bridges separate. So
a little bit tougher to crack the personal side of a person. But I do think when you do, that's when something special happens. And so I think from a marketing success was, again, understanding the individual whys of people and then talking to them about it and being genuine. I think those are the things that, again, I said earlier, building trust, but also being genuine and authentic to that person. Know that you really care, because that's, even though I serve as the president of MECO, I feel I'm a steward. I'm there for a purpose, and it's not my purpose. It's to really affect and change the lives of the people that are under my care for the better. And I do really hold that as a big core purpose for me, and something that I'm passionate about. I get emotional about it because I do really care for the employees that I have, and I want to go above and beyond for them to make their lives better. I think that's so when we talk about marketing success, I feel like right now I've got a company of folks that I think really care for each other. Is it perfect? No. Do we have our differences? Oh, sure. Just like any family would. Grew up with 4 brothers. Believe me, it wasn't. We loved each other, but we also loved to fight with each other too. But I do feel that changing the course of a company and changing the course of changing the lives of the people that work there is definitely my proudest marketing moment, because it was, again, telling them a different story, that we didn't have to be where we were today, that we could be a major player in this industry. And we are today, where I think we're the best innovative company out there. Are we the biggest? Certainly not. There's some big companies out there, but are we the best? Absolutely, hands down. But when we get to tell our story, then our customers know it. Now we have to figure out, there are times where you just can't tell that story. Maybe they're not listening, or they don't want to hear. Maybe they're focused on something else like price, or things that maybe aren't in alignment with what we're trying to do. Well, then maybe they're not the best customer either. But I think the value that we sell today is not 100% about our machines. It's about the company that we are and how we're there to serve our customers as well. And
I think the leadership shows in the culture and in the productivity. All kinds of different awards that MECO has won with Manufacturer of the Year, Entrepreneur of the Year, Innovator, so forth. That's showing the creativity coming through from the leadership. I love storytelling, and you've gone down a lot of stories here about leadership and communication, and you've talked about MECO. You recently had a huge anniversary, and you also mentioned when you came in, there were people there 30, 35, 40 years. Talk about the history of the company, because it is an interesting story about how it began and how long it's been in existence, and people don't even realize it's here in Cranberry right by the Permanis.
Right.
I always use landmarks like that. Everyone will get it.
Yeah, it's a great company. When I first came to MECO, I was like, wow, this is amazing history here. And some people will joke, well, they were hammer and chisel. But when I started looking at the history of MECO, you noted that we celebrated our 125th last year. And during that time, I said, I really want to understand the history. I knew bits and pieces of it, certainly. And so I reached out to Edwin Spiker, who is one of the original family members that had purchased M.E. Cunningham Company back in I think the 20s or 30s. And Edwin's dad had purchased the company and then really moved it into the hand stamp business. And so I reached out to Edwin, and what a great project that I had with an experience with Edwin is he knew the history, and he came with like books after books of pictures and photos and newspaper articles about MECO and and its history. We used to be downtown Pittsburgh, and our building got wiped out by the flood and then caught fire, and then they had to move it to a different location and eventually up to Ingomar. And so just really interesting on just the history of the company, how it survived, but really how it was innovative. And at first I would dismiss it saying, well, it's just hand stamps, but they spent a lot of time developing the hand stamp technology. It was the Cadillac of hand stamps. It had technologies in the steel that made it safer for the operators, the folks pounding these hammer and chisel marking implements. They actually did a lot of research, and they were constantly innovators. I was really shocked at how much they actually were innovating, even in the traditional, what I call traditional marking, hammer and chisel. But they really did a great job. And so part of that process, we came up with a marketing, tell the story. Because if you came to Mecco, let's say prior to that 125th anniversary, you could never tell we were 125 years old. You would have said, oh, yeah, this must be a 10-year-old company. We weren't telling that story that we were this old and that had this long history of marketing innovation. So through that process, spent a lot of time with Edwin. We came up with a history wall of all of our marketing innovations and patents over the last 100 years. And it was awesome experience, even though the Spiker family, no longer is involved in the business. You can tell that's still part of their blood. It was really, it was awesome to experience that with Edwin. Even on the 125th anniversary, Edwin came out. A lot of the family members came out to Mecco as well. It was great. It was just an awesome feeling that this company has been around for such a long period of time. And my job, I gotta keep it running for another 126. That's my stewardship. I gotta make sure it's headed in the right direction. But it's been a great company for such a long period of time.
Well, pick a tool or tip you'd offer that will help our audience tell their story, craft their message, or communicate to internal and external target audiences. It could be a tool like Google Trends to generate content ideas, your favorite book, blog, or productivity resource, or a tip on how to approach their career, whatever you think might help our listeners.
Sure. Looking back on my path, I would say it has been a progression of knowing thyself. It is one where I think early on I got into an opportunity where I could have made my entire career in that one, designing machines. And, my brother's a mechanical engineer. He is great at designing machines, and that's what he does now. And so I understand that's definitely a great career path, but that's not how I was naturally wired. And so the more I explored what am I passionate about, the more I was willing to take risks, put myself out there, the more that I started to learn whether I did like it or not like it. I think those are the things that I try to understand more. And as you mentioned, as you get more and more into the business side, you start to understand, and especially leadership side. I've done 360 analysis where I've had folks, my bosses or owners evaluate me. I've had my direct reports evaluate me, and you learn a lot about yourself through that process. It's times it can be brutal.
It can be brutal.
Very brutal when you see, you think you're the best boss in the world. And when your team says, well, you know what, maybe that's not the case, it's kind of a rude awakening at times. But yes. I think the more that you know yourself, know your strengths and weaknesses, be genuine and authentic. I mean, there's some things that I'm very good at. There are a lot of things I'm not very good at, and I need help. And that's where I think building that team around me, and whether it's in business or even in personal life, there's just being open and honest. I think that helps out tremendous. So I think know thyself. What do you like? What are you passionate about? If you wake up in the morning and you're not excited about going to work, ask why. Don't just show up. Ask why. Explore that more. Because then you can, the more you explore that, the more I think you'll put yourself into a position of what we're all trying to do is be happy. Get into an environment where love, care, support, fun. We want to put ourselves in that type of environment. We're here for a short period of time. Although I'm not I'm a conservative in nature, I also believe that you got to experience a lot of things out there, and you definitely have to know thyself and understand what's going to bring out the best in you and really meet your passionate needs in life.
To really, I was fortunate to have a great mentor who was actually out of Boston. And he used to always say, trust begat trust. And what he was saying was that for someone to trust you, you have to trust them. And when you go and do that, there's a big vulnerability to that. But you have to go and point out those weaknesses that you have and know yourself and know what energizes and de-energizes you, and try to have people that trust you back, because I've been on both ends of it. You go and you open up, and then people take advantage of it some.
Oh, yes.
So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that is the the lessons learned at times is that I have, like you said, you have to be vulnerable. And it's kind of the same thing about love. You got to open yourself up because it can be great, or it can be, or someone can take advantage of it. So it is, I know at times my wife gets frustrated when I make comparisons about business and personal life, but there are common themes there. And I think I think being vulnerable, being open, some people are going to take advantage of that. There's no doubt about that. I'm fortunately in a position where if I see it, I can at least stop it. In the business world, if someone's taking advantage, then they don't need to work at Mecco.
Right.
But I would say, to even personal life, you don't need those people around. You can limit their exposure to you. But again, you got to start off with being vulnerable and open. I think that's the best policy, because if you do, then you get it's kind of exponential. I think you get much more than you'll ever get if you were just locked up, or at least conservative in your approach, or not vulnerable. If you're not honest, people see that. And then, again, I think that's what makes sometimes good managers. They tend to understand what they need to do, and they follow the process, and they can be that. I think good leaders have to open up their heart. I think, you can, I guess, be a dictator. I don't know, but who's enjoying that? Maybe you are, but not your team.
No.
That's not, to me, that's not a great leader. A great leader is someone that is willing to expose their own faults for the better of the team. And I think I think my team knows, I know my executive team knows my weaknesses. They call me out on it, and that's okay. I think that's...
Suzanne's the greatest at telling someone that's a vendor partner my weakness without humiliating me.
Right.
She does it so perfectly. She'll go, Dave can be very self-critical and impatient.
Sure.
And I'm like, she's really saying I'm a jerk.
Right.
No, she's not. But those 360s that you talk about, okay, I've gone through 3 different times when I was in leadership positions, and I think culture of the organization drives the 360, and I'll tell you why. They're most brutal when it's a culture that isn't as open and vulnerable. And that's when I had one that was brutal, where I had 5 director level people, and the things that were said in the 360, it was almost absurd that they weren't just talked about prior, whereas the other 2, the 360 was valuable, but not that valuable, because on a regular basis they would come in and say, you push that deadline a little too hard and you get agitated or whatever, and I could work on it. We'd have this conversation. But there was one 360 I had that was brutal. It was in a culture that wasn't open. And the things that were said were like, why wouldn't you just have said that? That bothered you. Have you experienced anything like that?
Oh, definitely. I think I would say about 2 years ago, it was, again, a good aha moment, or a moment where I really needed to know thyself. I think I got to a point where I had a management team, but I was not letting them do the things that I had hired them to do. I think I was involved way, way too much into the day-to-day activity, and I was paying for it, and I think they were paying for it as well. And although we were a fun culture, and I think we had a good culture, it wasn't great. And to me, if I can do something well or good, I don't know how. That doesn't excite me. Doing something great, that excites me. So I think we had a culture where a lot of the things didn't surface as they should have. But I did the 360, kind of took some lumps along the way. But I also then decided, hey, I need to make a change. And so I looked to some different coaches to help me out with that process. Worked with some folks really on the team building side to help us gel as a team. But personally, I had to really throttle back my assertiveness with the team and let them do their work and support them more. Again, if I was to be a good leader, I have to build them up as leaders. And I think at that point I was trying to be too much of a manager and manage their activities. And these guys are competent folks, and I wasn't really letting them do their job. And so I'll give you a good example. level of vacation. So before that, if I took a week off of vacation, I was constantly calling in, talking to folks, pulse on the business, making sure that everything's running smooth, and I never really let go. And we went through that team building process, and it was one where I think the team, we went through a process where it wasn't easy. A lot of emotion about who we were, what we're trying to do, whether we liked or disliked the other team members, and we really got to the heart of the issue of being vulnerable and open. And over the course of the next 2 years, it really transformed the team where they were just fantastic. I just, such a great transition of building leaders versus having a team of managers, and really building a team. Now these guys can count on each other. And it's one where I get to focus in on what I'm, as president, what I'm supposed to be focusing in on. And I let them lead their departments. They're more than capable of doing it. And so now I go on vacation. I trust that they're doing their job. They're going to do it well. They're doing it better than I could do it. So I don't, if they need me, they can call me. Other than that, they're awesome. They're great guys. They know how to do their job. They don't need me.
That's Dave Sweet of Mecco Marketing and Traceability, and you're listening to the No Bullshit Marketing Show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich, and it's time to keep calm and hit the bullseye. Dave, I'll ask you to choose between two marketing or messaging classics. Tell me which one you like more and why, but you only have a few seconds to choose and hit the bullseye.
Okay.
You ready?
I am ready, Dave.
Geico's Gecko or the Aflac Duck?
I like the gecko. I think he's just more appealing than the quacky duck. Every time I hear the duck, I just hear annoying. I don't know, maybe the gecko's accent, Australian accent or English accent.
Yes.
Just, I guess, more appealing. So, just more appealing animal, I guess.
Excellent. How about this one? American Express, Don't Leave Home Without It, or MasterCard, Priceless?
Oh, you're going to go with Priceless. I mean, those, they tug at the heartstrings, I think, of those moments in life that, although they're promoting spending and money, they go beyond that. I like that messaging is, with their card per se, you get to have these priceless moments. So I like that more than the
Makes an
American
emotional
Express.
impact.
Absolutely.
Progressive's Flo or Jake from State Farm?
Oh, I like Flo. Just their whole... I was thinking the other day, I wonder what they're like on set, because they have all the same characters, that the two guys that come in as well as like from the competitors. I don't know, it just seems fun.
It does.
And I think they've done a very good job in creating that character and making it a brand recognition. And she's quirky, and that sells. I think that's different. She's so every time they have a new commercial, they're innovating. I mean, Jake from State Farm, it's just Jake. They only done one.
He's wearing khakis.
Wearing khakis. I think that's a one-hit wonder, even though they try to change it with the Saturday Night Live, Dan Aykroyd, the Martians or whatever. That's take two. Flo's got a whole series of commercials. So.
Indeed. Tying back to your hometown and your region, Boston Legal or Cheers?
Oh, Cheers. No. That's the best show that's ever come out of Boston. So better than the Wahlburgers as well. But Cheers. I mean, that's a classic show. I think that resonated well. Even though it's I guess a Boston type of show, it's classic TV. Sam Malone, Cliff Clavin. I was walking the other day and my shoes are squeaking as I went across the floor, and I'm like, oh no, I got Cliff Clavin's on.
You talk about different personas. Think about that.
Sure.
Each person on there, Woody, Sam, Coach, Diane, Cliff, Norm, they all play a different persona that we can relate to, and that's why I think it was so popular.
Oh, yeah. It's a classic. There'll never be another.
Talk about the bar, the actual bar, because when you go to Boston the first time, you go, if you're from our age, ballpark, you go and check out a couple things, obviously Fenway, but you end up probably trying to get to Cheers, and it's so tiny.
Yeah, it's so tiny. I've only been there once, and I didn't even stay long. It was kind of, I think, as I came to Pittsburgh, I would say, "Hey, I'm going down to the Science Museum, or I'm going down to, to the Children's Museum," and I'd had folks around in Pittsburgh going, "I haven't been there in decades," and I'm like, "But it's 20 minutes away." I would say the same thing in Boston. I'm like, "I haven't." You don't go to Cheers or the touristy type of things as much,
Yes.
but it is different than the TV show.
So the last bullseye piece is reach out and touch someone, or can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now? I think that always resonated, although it was kind of annoying, but it did strike a chord because I think it just pointed to the pain that you would have, like probably back in the day when cell phone reception wasn't the best.
Exactly, for the time it was.
Right.
Well, now this episode, Sights and Sounds of Marketing, covers a year in which the NFL and Major League Baseball teams were from the same city. No, I'm not talking about 1979 when Pittsburgh was the city of champions. Let's look at the year 2004 when the New England Patriots won their second Super Bowl and the Boston Red Sox won their first World Series in 86 years. Dave, that had to be a great year for you as a sports fan. Tell me what you remember and the impact those wins had on your hometown region economically and culturally.
Sure. I'm going to talk about Red Sox more because the reality here is even though the Patriots obviously shown some success over the last decade or so, Boston is a Red Sox town. When the Patriots win the Super Bowl this year, the next day they'll be talking about how many days it is till spring training. So it's a Red Sox town. Red Sox, it was, we just had years and years of you just feeling, we're at the doorstep, yet we just can't ever make it happen. And I think that actually affected the psyche. When I came to Pittsburgh, I was like, wow, I thought Boston had great fans. Honestly, Pittsburgh is it takes it to another level. But I would say the closest is the Red Sox. And I think they, for years, we always had it's been 86 years and so it was, I think it does affect the culture. You'd say so many people saying they want to live and see a Red Sox World Series. So, I know where I was. I was in my house in Boston area. I was with my father-in-law, and because I just wanted to spend it with him. It was. I get emotional about it because it just brings you back to the time like my father-in-law just passed. But it does. If I think of like one of the best moments I ever had with him, it was just sitting on the couch and seeing Keith Folk underhand that ball to Doug Mankiewicz, and just knowing all of that went away, but also to just experience that with my father-in-law. Just a great time.
Amazing stuff, Dave. Thank you for being so vulnerable. Other sights and sounds of 2004 include this one guy. He's kind of in the news a little bit now, but in 2004, Donald Trump's new reality show, The Apprentice, is a hit, making "You're fired" a catchphrase. Did you like the show Apprentice?
Oh, I love any business show. I love, whether it's Apprentice, I love Shark Tank, I love The Prophet, love Undercover Boss. Been getting my daughter to she loves those shows too, so it's kind of fun to experience that with the kids. But anyway, Trump, I love The Apprentice. I thought the first few seasons,
the first few were great.
I mean, it was such a interesting concept, and I love the competitive nature. I love business, and Trump, he's a bit of a character, so
a bit,
yeah. So I thought it would be great entertainment. You're fired. Oh, it's perfect. I mean, It's a catch line. It resonated with everyone. Yeah, I think everyone kind of felt like, hey, I could be the boss too and say that.
Yes.
So great job.
Great messaging.
Really enjoyed it.
Another sight and sound of 2004 was Janet Jackson has a wardrobe malfunction during the Super Bowl's halftime show.
Right. No, I remember that. I remember where I was in San Francisco at the time, at a trade show, and we had to watch the Super Bowl from San Fran. And so, yeah, to me, that was like, that's staged. It's such a planned thing. I think that's a bit of the reality TV. It's a lot of.
Well, how about this? TiVo was relatively new, and that took DVRs. TiVo was the only thing. It had the equivalent of like Kleenex and Xerox for copy machines in the old days, and then DVRs became on their own. Because of that, it was the most rewound thing on TiVo. And the second thing that I like is when these things happen and they try to phrase them. So they have a PR firm or someone thinking of the right words, and they called it wardrobe malfunction. So then that became the line for anything that happened for the next year. It was a wardrobe malfunction. A new social network called The Facebook is launched. The Facebook.
Right. I saw the movie. I'll be honest, I'm not a big Facebook fan. I think I struggle with the authenticity of it. I guess that's where, if we were talking about, as bullshit marketers, to me, that's like the epicenter of BS. I think it's one where people are delivering a message that I'm not buying. And so I don't do Facebook as much. My family back home, they kind of push me to get on it, but I don't. To me, as people, I've had my cell phone number since for 15, 20 years. People need to get a hold of me, or they have my email address. I don't know. I struggle with the fact that I don't know, that it's I appreciate the communication of Facebook. I actually understand that. I think, as we saw, that actually made a significant impact in the I think civil disruption and that we saw in the Middle East a few years ago. People communicating over Facebook, sending powerful messages and uniting. So I think that's a powerful, powerful tool. But I don't care so much about what people are doing on a constant basis, what they're eating. I think I know a lot of people bolster what their lives are about. That's not genuine to me.
Agreed. And in the movie, Justin Timberlake leans in and says, "Get rid of the."
Right.
What a big messaging difference. It's just Facebook. Another movie, Napoleon Dynamite, leads to a resurgence of tater tots.
Yeah, I think that's almost comes down to Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point. If you get someone to carry your message, like all of a sudden things tip. And for the tater tot industry, I guess that was a great plug for them. I'm sure sales skyrocketed, but it's an interesting phenomenon where just one small thing may tip the scale, and that if you have that right spokesperson sending the message, how powerful that can be for your product.
Absolutely. Dave, how can listeners contact you if they'd like to learn more about what you do?
Sure, you can contact me on my email address, dave.sweet@mecco.com, MECCO.com. Probably the easiest and quickest way, or you can go to our website, www.mecco.com, and learn more about our products and services that we offer.
Excellent stuff. Vulnerable, great storytelling, a tremendous guest. Thanks for being on the show.
Well, thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me.
And thank you, our listeners, for joining us for the No Bullshit Marketing Show. Visit nobullshitmarketing.biz, that's B-I-Z, for show notes plus additional marketing and messaging resources. Are you signed up for light reading? You'll receive valuable strategies every other week to improve your marketing and transform your message. It really is light, intended to be read in 2 minutes or less, and it just might trigger bright ideas for you. To sign up, visit masssolutions.biz. Remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions.